So your back's got to be ready. You need the mobility, you need the flexibility, you need the right technique. What I see is that late starters sometimes want to become competitive too quickly by doing what the others are doing. But what the others are doing, first of all, doesn't mean that it's smart, and it doesn't mean it works for you. So individuality is key. At an age of more than 80 years, when many people sit around in retired people's homes and worry about the next lunch, rowers are out there on the course just banging their heads and enjoying a beer afterwards, or a cup of tea, whatever you prefer. Hi, hello, and welcome everybody to today's video. Today I would like to answer one of the most frequently asked questions that you girls and guys have been asking for the last couple of years. Can you become competitive as a late starter in rowing? So if all you want to know is it possible or not? Of course it is. But now let's get into details. There's that classic picture. You start to row in high school or in school. I started to row when I was 10 years old. My sister started to row when she was 9. So we started to row as children, basically. The advantage is that you can learn technique as a game. It's a bit of a play. And interestingly, the older we get, the more we try to perform when we learn something new, which is silly. But anyway, this is how we are wired, or many people are wired. At the same time, you can still learn technique when you're old. A lot of people start at the age of, 26, 30, in their mid-30s, 40s, in the 50s, in the 60s, and even in their 70s. And the question is, can you compete when you start that late? And the answer is yes. Competition classes in rowing go all the way up to 86 or 87 years average crew age. The good thing about rowing is that you can do it until you basically drop dead. The question is rowing such an elite sport you have to enter early? No, by no means at all. Some people say that the sport of rowing is on a decline, but that's not true. The sport of rowing is actually on an incline. Most rowers today start late. This is the largest group of rowers and probably the fastest growing group of rowers. Unfortunately, quite often I see this amongst my athletes, for example, who start late and work with me to become competitive. They say, I don't know, that, the old elite rowers, there are no elite rowers in masters. There are seasoned rowers, they're very well experienced rowers. But the general idea of the rowing community is that it's a friendly and open community. And that's the perception I have no matter where I go. Rowers are extremely friendly and welcoming. If you join a club, you may not always have that feeling because you feel like, I don't know, I can't row as well as they do. They don't invite me to row with them. Well, the reason is that you should learn the technique first, because it's not fun to sit with a complete beginner in the same boat. You just don't feel the same flow. This is why some rowers who are seasoned are a bit restricted when it comes to, hey, I really want to help you to row, but I want to enjoy my own rowing as well. But the better you become, the more you will be invited to race with these people. A friend of mine, a former athlete and a friend of mine in the US enjoyed that. I helped him to bring up his level of technique. I helped him to build his physiology until he was invited to race with the seasoned racers, which was one of the best events for him ever. And this is how you get into that sport. It's not a closed elitist community. It's very open. What do competitions look like? Well, we call these regattas, and these regattas, the classic masters racing distance is a 1,000 meter race. In a single will take you about 3.5 to 5 minutes, depending on how fast and fit you are. Then there are other racing distances. For example, in the US, Head of the Charles. In Austria, Rose from Wörthersee. So Wörthersee is a pretty large lake. It's 16 kilometers from one end to the other end. And they have a race in the skiff, in the single scull, and in the 8. For the masters, it's sometimes a competition factor, and sometimes it's just competition and travel and leisure factor. Usually these races are being held in beautiful, astonishing scenery. And that's one of the big pluses of masters rowing. You get to travel internationally because races are held internationally. A couple other races I would like to mention, and this list is by far not complete, so please forgive me or put other races in the comments below. In the US, you get the Masters Nationals, and you have the World Rowing Masters Regatta, which takes place every year at a different location across the world. Then you have the Euromasters Regatta in Germany, every second year in Germany, and now I think they alternate that every other year it's somewhere else. It's called Euromasters Regatta, but it's just a brand name. In fact, it's open to anyone who would like to compete. It's a 1,000 meter race. Whenever I go there, it's such an open, friendly atmosphere. I wouldn't call it a party because it's not so much about drinking. It's all about, you know, meeting each other again. You meet people from across the globe, and I really enjoy these Masters events a lot. All right, then classic races. Renowned and classic races. Silver Skiff Torino, that's Italy. It's a head race, a long distance head race with actually a turn in the middle. And you get to travel to Italy. Usually very well organized and a very classic and beautiful race to compete in. Then in the US, we got Head of the Schuylkill in Philadelphia, we got Head of the Challenge. In Portugal, we have the Aerobic Monsters Regatta, which also takes place in the fall. And in Spain, Seville Masters Regatta. There are so many more races you can possibly join. For example, in Czech Republic, in Trebon, there's the Czech Masters Championships where everybody else can join. So a lot of Austrians go to Czech Republic there. But there are many more races. Again, send the links to me, put them in the comments below. I'm happy to, you know, publish all the races there are. It doesn't matter if you are an explosive athlete, raw strength based, or more the endurance type, because in rowing you need both. So it doesn't matter from which corner you come from, you need to train to become comprehensive. Should you be tall? No. I know that a lot of people still think you need to be tall, but that's mostly coaches who learned rowing in the 70s, where we had very soft material with long levers where you had to be tall to be competitive. But even then you had world champions who were like 180 centimeters tall. How is that possible? You know, winning over somebody who's 2'10". Because size is not that important. It's how you use your height. The question is not, am I tall enough? The question is not, am I endurance athlete? Am I explosive athlete? Am I heavy athlete? The question is, do you enjoy it or not? And then don't ask questions about what you should be. Just go for it and take it. You know, when I started to row, everybody told me too small, too small, too small, too light. And then I ended up beating the heavies around me. How is that possible? Don't ask questions, just do it. Enjoy it. That's the prime message. On the linear erg, so indoor rowing, the linear erg indoor rowing competitions, there it pays off to be tall and heavy because these machines work differently than the boat. In the boat, you have to carry around your own body weight. So technique is much more important than on a linear erg. But I'm talking mostly about on-water rowing here. They do. Because they learn to row when they were kids. They have the experience of racing. They usually don't get nervous so quickly. They know how to row in bad weather, usually. And there is a lot of pedigree behind it. So if you are the start of a race, there are already a couple of races under your belt which help you to have more confidence. But there are also downsides seasoned rowers have. First of all, a lot of seasoned rowers tend to do rowing only. They don't have comprehensive fitness in terms of having excellent mobility, having focused on strength for 6 months, because they think all I need to do is row, 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 but that's not the solution. I think as a rower, and this is my experience as a coach, from junior level to master's level to Olympic level, the more comprehensive your fitness is in terms of, okay, you can do cycling as well. You don't have to be a competitive cyclist, but you should be able to ride a bike, you know, for an endurance session every once in a while. Running, certainly, doesn't hinder you to become effective. A solid strength basis, or you don't focus on endurance for a while. That's certainly helpful because it builds your raw strength. It strengthens your joints, your cartilages, your ligaments, your tendons. If you only row, it's pretty one-sided, and that's one of the main downsides seasoned rowers have. It's the versatility that sometimes is lacking. Another downside seasoned rowers have is that they tend to follow the technique they learned when they were young, when the equipment was different and soft. Today's equipment is much stiffer. It's a different world. It's not the equipment we had in the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s. It's different. It's much stiffer and requires a different rowing style. That's an advantage that late starters have. When you start to row right now, you learn to row with today's equipment. You don't have to relearn reluctantly. And you don't look for security because you're new anyway. You've got nothing to lose. It's a great thing to be an outsider, a newcomer, because there's nothing you have to prove. It's just a joy. That doesn't mean that there aren't very, very fast seasoned rowers. You know, one of them, for example, I remember in the early 2000s, the Estonian rowing legend, Jüri Jaanson. He was extremely successful in the 90s and I think also early 2000s. I think he stopped after either Olympic Games Sydney or Athens. I remember 2008 at the Euromaster Regatta in Munich. He entered in the single, I think it was Masters B, in his late 30s. And he won, of course. I mean, it was by miles. And a couple of years later, we saw him making a medal at Olympic Games. Again, he used the Masters scene to make his comeback into international rowing, which is a smart move. You will compete against very good people, but again, I wouldn't join rowing for the sake of I'm going to win easily. No, it's the community, it's the health, it's the fun factor. What are possible issues that you can face when you are a late starter in rowing? Probably the most frequently found issue I see is that people tend to do rowing only. They row as much as they can. They go in the water in the morning, in the afternoon, or 5 times a week, or they do 90-minute erg sessions because everybody else says you have to do this. So the problem is a lack of plan, a lack of strategy, and a lack of individual build-up. If you have not rowed since you were a kid, of course, you don't have the joint stability you need. Because it's one thing to do 10 reps, but it's another thing to do this for an hour. So your back's got to be ready. You need the mobility, you need the flexibility, you need the right technique. What I see is that late starters sometimes want to become competitive too quickly by doing what the others are doing. But what the others are doing, first of all, doesn't mean that it's smart, and it doesn't mean it works for you. So individuality is key. And this is what I do on a daily basis. So I work with athletes who are late starters or who are seasoned rowers, both of my team. I build them up individually from A to Z. So we set a certain target and say, okay, in 2 years or in 3 years or in 12 months, I want to race here. I've already done 1 year, 2 years for rowing, or I have not done any rowing. Please help me, build me up from scratch, make me fast and competitive. So it's a physiological build-up with strength, with mobility, with stretching, with the right type of endurance. So not steady state is one pace only and that's usually too high. No. You need to set the right intensity levels. You know, these are things which are important and are often neglected, not just by late starters, but also by seasoned rowers. Seasoned rowers tend to do what they've always done, but it doesn't mean that it works. Also, a huge group are the comeback rowers, but I'm gonna make a different video, a separate video about comeback rowers. If you're interested and you've watched the video until now, let me know, drop your comment below and I will do a video about it. So how can late starters in rowing become competitive? Get a thorough plan that is tailor-made for you and for nobody else, which takes into account your individual physiology. Are you an explosive athlete? You need to train in a certain way. Your rest days need to be structured in a certain way. If you're an endurance athlete, your rest days look completely different. Do you have enough upper body strength? Is there enough core strength? If no, which core exercises should you do? If you're strong enough, do you have the right type of strength? Are the muscle slings connected the right way? And these are all things that are important and have to be taken into account. So to sum up the main question of today, can you become competitive as a late starter in rowing? Of course. Rowing is not an exclusive club of elitist young starters. It's there for everybody. And the late starters in rowing are the fastest growing group in rowing. Go to rmtraining.com, fill out the program entry questionnaire, and let me know how I can help you. All right, ladies and gents, all the best. I'm looking forward to talk to you, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye.